I mean, it would have only come up to my thighs. It's not, these ponds are they were built by the Georgians and the Victorians, but mainly the Georgians. And they were deliberately built for ice skating. As ponds in the summer and ice skating in the winter.
Right. So basically the idea was to, it's basically to not have a hazardous, experience, because no one's going to drown in it if the worst case scenario.
Yeah, correct.
Yeah, that's really good. Well, that's very interesting. We'll have to talk about ice skating a little bit more later. But we are live, everybody. We're live, everyone, for Brainfood Live On Air, the first Brainfood Live of 2021, bringing it to you every Friday from here on forward to the end of the year. So we've had a 2-week break. I hope everyone has had a very good time off. And we're geared and ready for hopefully a better, a more positive year ahead. So welcome everybody to the show. As ever, we do a quick sound check before we do anything. So just to make sure everyone can hear me. If you can hear me okay, can you just say, yes, I can hear you? I think in the comments, that would be good to see in Crowdcast. We are live streaming, multicasting, I believe, on LinkedIn Live. So if you're watching this on LinkedIn and you can hear me okay, just give me a comment. Make sure you can say that you can hear audio. Everything is fine. Finally, we're on Facebook Live as well. So if you can hear me in the group, just give me a thumbs up, thumbs down, whatever. Just let me know whether you can hear me okay. Okay, that's great. By the way, we're also on Periscope, but Periscope's going to be killed in about 3 months' time. So I'm very sad for the 7 people that watch the show on Periscope. But we will be no more on that channel. I hope Twitter will kind of have a native option deployed in to replace that, because it's kind of a fun thing to do. It's on Twitter, anybody can go in and check it out. So yeah, hopefully it'll come back in some way, but in March it's gone. Anyway, moving on very quickly, I just want to give a quick shout out before we launch the show to our sponsors this week. Because our sponsors are an awesome product called Cronofy. New year, new habits, folks. Are you still manually scheduling your interviews? Because if you're doing that, you're wasting a huge amount of your time. There was a really interesting article, I think, on Recruiting Brainfood late last year about a survey that Yellow did about how much time was actually spent doing the logistics of interviewing. And it was as much as 2/3 of recruiting time was spent booking calls, booking kind of meeting rooms, chasing for feedback, doing all of those things that really you can do in an automated way. So I think if you're still doing that and you haven't implemented some kind of software, you really do need to try and do something. Now, I reckon you should give Cronofy a shout. They are enterprise ready. The big difference between them and I think some of the consumer tech tools that you see is that these guys basically are very focused on data protection, very focused on making sure it's compatible with ATSs. They've got a huge library of APIs you can plug into. So if you've got anybody with kind of implementation skills, really you can make full value out of that. I've just shared the link there, 14-day free trial. So there's no excuse. Check it out. If you're still manually chasing stuff for interviewing, you got to click on that link and figure it out. Okay, moving on very quickly. We're back with Adam Gordon. Adam, it's been a while, it seems, because we were going to do like review shows for Christmas and stuff. We abandoned it, and then that was a good idea to abandon it because I realized I was like on fumes. But it means that you haven't been on the show for like a month or so. So yeah, I'm kind of sad about that.
Yeah, I've had like some sort of abandonment disorder, like feeling of abandonment over the last few months.
Oh no! If there's a way in which there's an emoji for a digital pat on the head or something, I would share that with you. No, but Adam, really good to have you back. You're always going to be like the person doing the co-hosting, if available and stuff. So definitely great to see you back in the hot seat. And as ever, we're going to review the newsletter because I know you're on a deadline today, so we can't be spending time nattering too long. But quickly on the newsletter, man. I mean, did you read it? And if so, what was interesting for you?
I mean, to be honest, we could do a full hour on reviewing this week's newsletter. It was absolutely rammed with great content. So I'm just going to pick up a couple of the things that I think were were interesting. Everybody should go and look at Josh Burson's HR technology report, but set aside an hour to go through it, at least an hour to go through it, because it is a chunky piece of work. So that's the first thing. I'm not going to say anything more other than go and read it. There's just so much in it.
I'm going to just stick out the Dropbox link that I pulled that report in, and I totally recommend that everyone gets involved in that. That is an outstanding piece of work, and it's like it's almost like the statement of sort of statement of where recruitment tech, HR tech currently is. So if you're using technology, you're planning to do any kind of implementation this year, you've got to just have that deck to hand. So so definitely click on that. Yep.
I enjoyed, but didn't necessarily understand all of Lars Schmidt's article in Fast Company about the ways that HR is likely to change this year or look different this year. But the one that really did resonate, because I'm just not an HR guy, so some of it was a little bit over my head, but one of them that really rung true for me is the idea that a separate work-life persona is probably retired now. Most people don't have a separate work-life persona, and it would probably be the wrong thing to do that now. I remember maybe 10 years ago when the head of comms at Grant Thornton told me that people should not have a split personal and work Twitter. And I kind of had thought they maybe should at that point. And he explained it around, you're one person, you bring your whole self to work, etc., etc. You're a tax consultant and you're an ice skater. Just be a tax consultant and an ice skater at the same time. And I agree with that totally.
Yeah, I've been on the same journey. I used to have split accounts. There used to be Hung Lee, tweeting stuff that was terrible, and then Hung Lee professional. And you can't maintain those two things. I think the shift to remote has made that impossible, simply because your life bleeds into the screen. I mean, there's stuff going to be happening. We're talking now. We've locked the kids in the cupboard somewhere, but they're going to emerge at some point and interact, with what you're doing. So there's nothing much you can do about that, and we need to embrace the idea that we are, full human beings with all of the things that come along with that. So I think that's going to be. I think Lars is absolutely correct on that. Just shared the link to that post. You should check it out. Okay.
You might notice one person's objected to that notion, however, which is recruiting animal.
Of course he has. I mean, he's persisted in, although a question mark on whether that's a professional thing, but having a puppet called the animal. But yes, I'm sure that's
on his bank card and his passport and everything now.
I'm sure he's argued the case. But Michael, if you ever want to put the hat on and come on screen, you know what? We might have space for you to do that later on today, which might be your debut actually, which would be quite awesome. Anyway, what else, man?
So John O'Sullivan's talent management predictions were pretty somber reading, really, I think. But the two that stood out to me are that he reckons that employee engagement is going to make way for innovation and productivity, and it's just going to peter out effectively as a concept within business. Mm-hmm. I could argue the opposite, or I could argue that it is absolutely mandatory for innovation and productivity. But it was interesting to read that point. But then also, I can't quite understand this one. He's talked about the death of corporate provided learning. Now we've got so much conversation today about should you buy or should you build your talent, and there's lots of people making equally valid arguments for building your talent and building internal as the primary source of new talent for your organization. So I'm not really sure that that's one that's actually going to fly.
Yeah, I like that post a lot by John O'Sullivan. Yeah. Again, I've shared it in the chat stream. Reason why I liked it is because it is a little bit controversial and a little bit sort of counterintuitive. In the sense, it's quite a pessimistic take, or you could perceive it as pessimistic. He's just that, or you could even look at it as just indication of change. But I think he's talking about this, the full human being that we've just referred to might actually have better tooling in their full human lives for things like personal learning and development that you would ever get provided for compared to companies. So in other words, if you wanted to develop your skills, you're going to find your own way to do that. Maybe a company might support you to do it, but you wouldn't necessarily go down some sort of company managed way of you doing skills learning. So I've got some sympathy with that, but again, I'm not particularly firm either way on how that's going to slide.
I still think that there's going to be a further trend this year, as there was in 2020, towards the blending of the internal and external talent pipelines, and for companies to immediately, when a vacancy goes live, to immediately consider a group of people, whether they're currently in the organization or whether they're not, in exactly the same assessment process. And in order to do that, I think that corporate learning is really vital to maintaining engagement with both those internal and external pipelines.
Yep.
However, it ties in with his argument that actually he's almost saying the CEO doesn't care about that. The CEO cares about productivity and innovation.
Right. And I think there's an element of truth in that, in the sense that a CEO has to be a rhetorician at some point. They have to present the vision. They have to do that leadership stuff. They have to care. That's definitely true. But they also have to care about the stuff that is quite ugly, which is the balance sheet. The stuff that people don't like to talk about. That person, the CEO, has to make the tough decisions. You know this, Adam, better than anybody else. I kind of know it, and I'm terrible at it. 'Cause I'm a big softie. But ultimately, that person will have to consider the bottom line. And I think what John Sullivan is saying is that the bottom line will be at a premium in the coming months and years and so on, rather than, the previous trajectory we were on, where it seemed that, we were doing a lot of the social good stuff. But anyway, it's a big it's a little bit of a counter-intuitive view and counter-consensus. So it's an interesting one to review. Okay, one more, man, before I ask you about your predictions for the year.
All right, so the one more is LinkedIn's crowdsourced 20 big ideas which are going to shape the world.
Yep.
I just wanted to point to one because I've certainly noticed it, and I think probably quite a lot of people here will also have noticed it. And that is that the way that cities are altering their sort of center, or like their centers, effectively, their center of gravity. Mm-hmm. I think they call it the blueprint of cities is going to change, and a lot of big cities are talking about the 15-minute city, whereby you can access everything you need within 15 minutes of your home, wherever in the city you are. I can see this in Glasgow, absolutely, where I live. I don't need to go. I almost never go to the West End or the city centre, or within 10 minutes of my home, I've got several parks, I've got houses, I've got restaurants and shops and things like that. The area within sort of 10, 15 minutes of my home, there's a lot more, even in 2020, a lot more restaurants have popped up, even if they're actual pop-up restaurants. There's been a lot more shift towards local community. The Facebook group for my local community has just exploded with life over the last 6 months, progressively more and more. And I think local community is really amplified over the last 12 months, and it's going to continue to do so.
Yep, I do agree with that as well. I mean, it's just that the cities are going to get flattened. That's the image I've got. They'll just get squashed. They'll be less dense, but they'll be flattened out, and there'll be little village type feels in many respects. They always say London is actually a city of 1,000 villages. Those villages are going to just be a little bit more compelling to stay in. And you're not going to get on that tube to travel 45 minutes to another place because you need to get that bagel or whatever it is, because that stuff is going to be available to you locally or deliverable. That's another aspect of staying where you are. We've found that a lot of these goods and services are coming towards us rather than having to go out there to acquire them physically. So yeah, some big changes, definitely.
I mean, in London, it's always really been like that because of the size of the city. In New York, it's like that. But even in smaller cities, Glasgow's got a kind of metropolitan area of about 1.5 million. And I can see it. There's 20 villages. There's 20 small towns now. And it wasn't really like that. It was a city centre and the suburbs, and that was it. The suburbs have all become small, proper, thriving kind of communities.
And you know what? We got to hope that's the way it goes, because the suburbia has always been, I thought, a very soulless kind of experience. And I really hated this just being in a residential box and then having to get into a car or a bus or somewhere to go someplace interesting or necessary. And that entire mode of living, I think if one thing we can do is to get rid of that, and make everything foot mobile, within physical, bike mobile type of distance, that would be a much better way to be. And you can always still go further if you needed to. So yeah, super interesting, man. Super interesting. Okay, cool. Thanks a lot for that, Adam. Now you've only got 15 minutes with us today, because you've got to shoot off to do more important things in Brainfood Live, which, you start the show saying you're desperate to come back on, and here you are, like, abandoning ship halfway through. But the topic is going to be like predictions for 2021, and we've got a load of great guests on. We're going to bring on shortly. But you are also a person that has got plenty to say about that, particularly about your kind of niche about sort of the relationship building, nurturing people, automation at the front end of the funnel, and also into as you're building those relationships going forward. Give us your specific prediction, Adam, for your area. What do you think is going to happen, for instance, in
I want to just say two quick things. One of them is a bit more of a macro thing, and I'm going to be really honest, and people are not going to like this. I think we're going to have to work really hard to find joy over the next 6 months. We're going to have to continue to work hard to find that. Things are going to be really tough. And the idea within one of the Brainfood articles this week, I think it really did reference it. It's very, very likely there's going to be a second recession happening this year. And so we just need to put our crash helmets on, be kind to each other, and help each other as much as possible, because things are not going to be any easier than they were in 2020 in the first half of this year. But more specifically, you're not going to be very surprised to hear my prediction. And my prediction is that most corporate organizations and recruitment agencies are going to continuously, and it happened in 2020 and it happened in 2019, they're going to become much, much better aware of the concept of building ecosystems, building communities, building their own recruiting brain foods, becoming the epicenter of their own, kind of ecosystems. And we, in no other world, in no other sales and marketing world, do people continuously spend money over and over again to build brand new ephemeral relationships, like short-term 5-minute relationships. Are you good for the job? No. Are you good for the job? Okay, that 5-minute relationship is now going to be a 5-day relationship, and then it's gone, and start again. New. Somebody, I was on a media thing a few weeks ago, and the guy that was on it said, can you imagine being a sales manager, going to your sales director and saying, okay, we got 50,000 warm relationships in the database, but I'm not sure about any of these, so I'm going to spend the next few days going and finding new prospects. It just wouldn't do it. So we have to build, relationships for life with candidates from the moment they start in the workplace, or the moment they go to university or school, or leave school or whatever, through to the moment they retire. And it was obvious that was going to be my recommendation, or my prediction.
Yeah, but you know what? I think people are a lot more sensitive to this concept of ecosystem building, right? In the sense that you can't just, the way in which you describe it, I think is really, really well put, in the sense that you're constantly acquiring the new. And even the person you've acquired, you dispose of that, and you have to acquire him again or her again at some other point, because if you just hit that person with another advert or another sales message or whatever it is, when you've already, all that effort really needs to be more in a more strategic and put in a more compounding way. So it's less about transacting now. It's all about building a contact point where that relationship just builds value over time. And then once you have that channel of communication open, it suddenly becomes less of a sales conversation. It's just more of a conversation. And actually your conversion, therefore, is non-problematic. If people don't know, this is basically how sponsors happen on Brainfood, by the way. I've never sent a sales message ever. And I've never actually sent, we're looking for sponsors. Show me an example where Brainfood's ever made that announcement, we're looking for sponsors. Never happened. It just comes in. And the reason why it comes in is because I think we're building relationships by doing shows like this. We're being regular, we're trying to add value, we're having great conversations, people are getting into it. And then over time, people just want to associate with the brand and the service. So I think definitely there is a way forward for doing that. So I look forward to that for sure, no question. Excellent. Listen, Adam, can you still hang on, or do you need to go?
No, I'd like to hang on for a few
minutes. I want to bring on.
Talk to them.
Yeah, I want to bring on Martin Redstone first, because he's doing a lot of the stuff that I think you're very interested in, the conversational AI, the sort of automation front of the funnel, stuff like that. He's our first guest today, so I want to bring him on and see what he's got to say for himself. Oh, by the way, folks, for the guests that are listening right now, we're not going to say, oh, Happy New Year, happy whatever. We don't have the time for it. So no niceties. We're just going to get straight into it, okay? We'll do the niceties later. Okay, and another thing for everyone watching, if you have any questions for any of these guests, please ask it in the Ask a Question feature at the bottom of the screen. We're going to go to that at the end of the show, and we'll be able to deal with it from there. There he is, Martin Redstone. How you doing, Martin?
Afternoon, gents. Yeah, good, thanks. How are you?
Good stuff. Good to see you, sir. Good to see you. Martin, for the people who don't know you, can you quickly introduce yourself, who you are, and what do you do?
Yeah, sure. Thanks. So Martin Redstone, as you said, Hung, I'm all about conversational AI, which is just a geek term for anything to do with chatbots, or basically talking to a machine and allowing it to talk back to you. So that's what I do. I consult with companies, vendors and buyers, and trying to help the world be a little bit more conversational.
And by the way, I do rate Martin as one of the best people to follow on this topic, by the way. Not only because I think he's an expert at it, but because he's also very accessible with how he communicates sometimes difficult topics. And that's as important as anything else. You've got to make this chewable for people. I've just shared his LinkedIn there, so make sure you follow him on LinkedIn. All right, Martin, give me a specific prediction on what's happening with conversational AI and automation for 2021.
Yeah, sure. So actually, on the same kind of subject that Adam was talking about around relationships, I think that 2021, we've seen a lot of chatbot type stuff happening over the last few years, which a lot of the time doesn't really land very well. Adoption hasn't been great, but I think 2021 will bring around the concept of the understanding of the concept of conversational recruitment marketing. So it's about building relationships with people as soon as they land on your career site, on your job board, on your job page. Having this lovely pop-up that says, can I help you look for a job, rather than just jumping in there and being the whole in your face, do you want to apply? And then helping nurture that relationship as they go through the process. So I think that my first prediction is going to be all around what we call conversational recruitment marketing. So building those relationships and nurturing them as they go through the process.
What percentage of career pages are going to have that functionality by the end of the year?
Good question. Well, we're seeing really low percentage figures of kind of standard adoption of chatbots, but I think that we're going to start seeing kind of, I would be happy if we're single figure percentages of people adopting conversational marketing in their recruitment marketing and employer branding processes. I think if we get up to double digits, I'd be delighted, but we know adoption on this is slow. So I think that once people understand that concept and understand what it can do for that relationship piece that Adam was talking about earlier, I think adoption will come.
Yeah. Martin, did you, just to confirm, you said if it gets to 10%, you'll be delighted?
Yes.
Wow. Okay. I've got to be honest, if there's any heads of recruitment, people with responsibility for career sites that are on this, don't think that is good. You should be doing this. You need to be doing it.
Yeah.
If you're one of the 90%, you're like, that's awful. You need to be doing this now.
Yeah, I agree. And it's really interesting. And it's part of, I in preparation for this, I kind of wrote essays upon essays of my thought process just to kind of get it on some kind of paper. And really adoption has been very, very poor when it comes to conversational AI and recruitment, a lot poorer than people think. But that's because we're going through this, this lovely kind of hype cycle for the technology. Ultimately, I think there's a lot of pushback because you hear it all the time. People don't want to talk to chatbots. Recruitment's very much a people based process, and people want to talk to people and all this kind of stuff. Say again?
But they just don't.
They don't.
Most people do not want to talk to a person at the top of the funnel. They want to get their answer immediately from somebody that's not human.
Yeah, I don't want to talk to people at any point. I mean, that's basically where I'm at with it. But yeah, this is a very good point. Candidates basically don't want to have the relationship until there is like a genuine opportunity that they can go through, because we've jaded the candidate community so much that their expectations are on the floor. They just want to go through the system as quickly as possible and to make sure they've got the information they need and to monitor where the hell their application is going. It's when sort of you're in a situation where, yes, they're on to the next stage, that's when the relationship building might be most important. Okay, very good. Okay, Martin, one more thing for you. In fact, there's maybe a couple more things. What's the most exciting sort of radical far out thing that might happen in 2021 that may not be mass adopted, but it's like, oh crap, this is new. We're going to see this happening in conversational AI.
Well, I did have one outlandish prediction for you, Hung, and actually it goes along with what I was just saying about this pushback of candidates wanting to talk to people and not a box on the computer. So my most outlandish prediction for 2021, which we might see in 2021, and I'd be delighted if one company does this, is the ability to utilize conversational AI and overlay that on an avatar. And we saw that recently with Mitsuko versus BlenderBot that I shared on the Facebook group a while ago, where you can actually overlay what is ultimately a chatbot, but an NLP, a conversational chatbot that understands what people are saying and can respond back correctly. Overlay that with an avatar. And then you've got the candidate talking to what is a humanoid, as it were, or a person. So it's a face that they can relate to. It's something that I think is the future of conversational AI in recruitment. You think about the applications in terms of scalable asynchronous interviewing, all those kind of things that you can do with that kind of technology. So that's my most outlandish one, is overlaying an avatar with conversational AI. Really cool.
So on this, what it means is basically right now, the predominant way in which we are dealing with conversational AI is through typing text and getting text back. What you're saying is that an outlandish far out, somebody's going to implement it, will be there'll be some avatar talking to you and you talk back to it, and that's going to be the new way to interact with conversations. It's going to be voice based. It could still be typing, but that person, there'll be almost like a digital embodiment of the voice coming back at you.
Yes. Yeah.
Can I just ask Martin one other really quick question? How far away are we from? I know there's been some use cases, but they've been proven to be pretty basic and not quite what they were meant to be. But how far away are we from hey Siri, what's it like to work at Asda? Or hey Alexa, tell me what jobs Nestle are hiring for today in Sheffield?
And that's actually a really good question. It was one of my kind of 5 areas that I was jotting down in terms of what I think can happen with conversational AI, because that ultimately is a strand of conversational AI, voice UI, whatever you want to call it. I actually call it zero UI, because ultimately we shouldn't be interfacing with anything, because the most natural way you can interface with anything around you is using your voice. You're right. There's been a lot of people that have tried it. And I think that some of the use cases that we've seen have been, we've had one company doing the whole, hey, I don't want to say them out loud because we'll probably end up just triggering everybody's kind of smart assistants everywhere. But hey, handy speaker in the corner, tell me my job search results for today. And people have tried that, but it's about creating the journey. So other people from a voice application perspective have tried the whole kind of screening via voice. The feedback is iffy, because as soon as somebody hears a robo voice on the end of a call, they want to put the phone down because they think it's a call from I was going to say PPI, but that's in the past now, that kind of company. So I don't think we're too far away. I think it's about the journey. So if I was to think of the perfect journey and the perfect use case for voice, it would be exactly that. Waking up in the morning, like some people do, they ask Alexa what their news flash is for the day, what the weather's going to be like. They ask their Google Assistant what their calendar is like for the day. What are my job search results for the day? land in the job search results. Hopefully it's built in the correct way, so you can respond to say, I'd like to hear more about the second one. Talks a little bit more, gives you a bit more of a description, advert, then says, do you want to find out more about the company? Maybe relays to you, Glassdoor or Google Google feedback on that company, and then asks if you want to apply. Could be a one-click apply in terms of, you order your Amazon shopping on Alexa, you can just one-click buy, or it can dial you through to an automated voice line at that company to take the application and screen you. That would be my perfect use case and perfect journey. Nobody's perfected yet, but actually, theoretically, you could do it now if you really wanted to.
I think so. On that note, I think it's going to take some bravery as well from the user, because you remember the first time, some of us are old enough to remember when it was like alarming to buy something on the internet, and it was like terrifying to put your credit card details in. And your first time you did it, it was like, what am I doing? Am I losing all my money? Or I need to take out a special account and put 100 quid only in it and make sure it doesn't, bleed out on your main account. It's the same when you're buying stuff online with voice. I think people are going to be terrified of that until there's like repetition and delivery and stuff like this that makes it all happen. Anyway, listen.
I'm going to say very, very quickly, one of the things that we never talk about and we never think about, though, is the other side of the journey. Why aren't we providing conversational AI assistants, voice assistants to recruiters to speed up some of their processes as well? That's one of the pieces that we never talk. We always talk about candidate experience, but a lot of the time it's recruiter experience as well, and we can do so much on that side of things.
Is there anybody building a recruiter assistant conversational bot? I'd love to hear if you are, because you're absolutely right. Everything is like candidate facing, but would it be useful for a recruiter? I think, damn yeah,
There's people that are certainly trying, and people that have tried and certainly trying. I think that the key is going to come when people can start implementing that within Teams, within Slack, because that's conversational. You're still typing away, you're still chatting. And there are companies out there that have created employee assistants within Teams and within Slack and all those kind of things. But nobody's really thought about it from a recruitment process. People have certainly tried and people are doing it, but it's not been done large scale and successfully.
Right. Okay. We've got to move on. Martin, you might have something to quickly screen share with us. Is that right? Yes or no?
I can do. Yes. Yeah. Why not? Let's do it.
Okay. Because basically, I had a little preview of this, but Martin's going to show us how this like embodied digital AI thing works. You got about less than 5 minutes, like 2 minutes to show this. So fire it up, and I'll share screen if you can, or I'll focus the screen on you.
I can't see a way of sharing my screen, so it might be something you need to do. I can. Yeah, hang on a second. There we go.
Adam's dropped off for some reason. Okay, I'm going to focus the screen. Yeah, everyone's got it. That's fine.
Okay, cool. So let me just give you the preamble. This won't take more than a few minutes. This is exactly what we're talking about, overlaying conversational AI onto a digital avatar. This was something that I built along with some colleagues in the world of conversational AI, a company called Coco Hub over in Israel, who are chatbot and conversational AI experts. This was a digital avatar that has its own email address. You can invite it to a Zoom meeting and then have a conversation with it over Zoom. And that's exactly what I'm doing here. So this is the Zoom recording of me talking to a digital avatar that I built the conversation for and overlaid it into the avatar. Wasn't a massive amount of work to do. So fingers crossed this works. Here we go.
All right, let's have a look.
Hello. Hi, I'm Martin's interview assistant. What do I call you? Human?
Dave.
Hello, Dave. Will you please tell me your last name?
Jones.
So, just to make sure, is your last name Chinese?
No.
Then,
and that was genuine. There's no smoke and mirrors in here. I'm giving it he. His name is Brian, as far as I'm concerned. He thought that my last name was Chinese when I said Jones, misheard it. So I straight away said no, and he asked me to correct it based on the conversational AI that I built behind it.
That's very interesting, Martin. I don't think we have time to watch too much. But let me, if this is available, it'd be really interesting actually. to kind of bring it back to, so people can, if there's a link to this, I think it would be useful to maybe share it.
I've just put it up on YouTube, so let me share that on the chat so people can look at that.
Yeah, perfect. And let me see if I can get you back to.
There we go.
Refocusing screen. I've actually don't know how to use Crowdcast. There we go. Okay, great. Well, listen, we've lost Adam, which is fantastic. It's not fantastic. Goodbye, Adam. He's got better things to do. We're going to bring on, I think, Christina now, and Christina's going to help us talk about a recruitment marketing. So it's kind of related. So why don't you stay on screen for a sec, Martin? We'll maybe do a relay of this, and we'll keep 3 people on screen. And we'll see how we go. So Christina, I think I've invited you. Let's see whether that works. Adam's out. Cool. You've met Christina before, haven't you?
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool.
Hey.
Yeah. Perfect. Yeah. There you go. How are you doing, Christina?
I'm all right.
Great to see you.
I've been bouncing around, really excited about what both Adam and Martin have been saying, because it kind of really ties in with what I wanted to share with you. So
cool.
Control myself.
Well, listen, we're gonna go straight into it. Christina's right there. By the way, quick intro, Christina. Who are you? What do you do?
So I am MD at Green Umbrella Marketing. We're a social media agency focused on working with recruiters, but we do content management, all sorts of things as well. But social media is my thing.
Awesome company. Brainfood have had the pleasure of working with Green Umbrella before. They're a brilliant business. So do check them out. Okay, Christina, getting straight into it. Let's have a specific prediction from you in recruitment marketing, content marketing for 2021. What do you reckon is going to happen?
Okay, so Adam mentioned ecosystem and communities, and Martin talked about conversational marketing. And I really think content is going to get far more experiential. It's going to be very much about real time. If you think about this as a, something obviously weird, like, what's it, episode 91 now? The number of people that are on this call, you've been ahead of the curve, right? Right now, we've got so many sort of opportunities, whether it's live streaming through Zoom, and now everyone's more comfortable with video. It's not such a scary thing anymore. People are more into it. We're seeing lots of things in terms of the social media algorithms where they want serialized content. So there's massive opportunity there. And right now,
explain a little bit about what serialized content is, Christina.
So being able to tune in same time, same place, week after week after week. Remember like, the old days before we had Netflix, when you wanted to see the next installment, you had to wait a week.
Mm-hmm.
Do you remember that excitement? And you get the spoilers. Essentially that's what we're talking about. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
We get your email on a Sunday, the equivalent of getting like the Radio Times or whatever it was, the TV guide, and like you've read the little paragraph there, and it's like we've got to wait till Friday to like hear the discussion around it.
Yeah, perfect. So I think that's a really good way of thinking about it. So we're talking about serialization of content, consistency of putting it out there, and more interaction, right? So having a way in which you're interacting with this community rather than like polishing something and just pushing it. Giving the audience opportunity to contribute to the content, I guess.
Absolutely, and it's real time. So if we take this a step further, I know how we had literally only a couple of sentences worth of conversation, but Clubhouse is an app. Everyone in my world is talking about it. People are desperate to get on there. I've got 4 invites, by the way, if anyone wants one.
They're worth having. They're worth having. You should go grab them.
I think I figured out how to monetize Clubhouse.
Oh, there we go.
But if you think about that scenario, it's real time content. It is imagine you're walking the halls of a conference and you're going past the rooms and you can hear the conversations, like the panel discussions happening in each of those rooms. Okay, nothing's being recorded. You can step in, you can be part of that conversation. You put your hand up, you're up on stage with them. Okay, part of the Clubhouse rules is they kind of discourage recording of these conversations. It's really hard to put someone in your place. So, I know Neil Carberry is joining us, but let's say I dropped Neil a DM on LinkedIn, might be him picking it up. It might be his PA, VA, marketing agency, whatever. In Clubhouse, I get to speak to Neil. It's a real-time conversation. It's very experiential. And I can whatever happens with Clubhouse, it might die in 6 months' time, who knows? But
On
that type of content.
Just on that note on Clubhouse, I think it's also at the moment where the people who have adopted it are kind of like elite people, so to speak. And it basically, I've snuck in somehow. I don't know, definitely through the bathroom window or something. But basically, it means that you can actually hear someone that is like pretty much an A-lister. Like Alex Ohanian's there, the guy sort of started Reddit, and he's giving a talk, and you could talk to him. And that's like, oh shit, there's no way that would ever happen in any other format. Like, you could not have a dialogue of this type on LinkedIn, or as you say, you'd have to set it up with a PA or something, and it'll be like a big project to set up. So very exciting. They've got an exclusive kind of way to get in, but I think they're starting to open it out, and I know that because they allow me in. I mean, it's always a sign. It's always a sign. It's about standards have been dropped. Hung Lee's in there,
So it's invite only, but there is a side door. Okay, so. Because Hung's in my contacts, when Hung registered on the platform, I got a ping, one of your contacts are in there. It's a bit like going to a nightclub when you're like, yeah, I know the DJ, and you get let in the side door.
You know what? Can I tell you a story, guys? Do you know how many contacts are on my phone?
Is it one, Hung? Is it one?
No. Guess the number. Do you know how many?
I mean, we're probably talking about thousands.
How many?
10,000?
More.
Wow.
But it's fucked up because I accidentally merged my professional CRM back when I was recruiting with my personal contacts on my phone, and it completely destroyed any ability for me to use the contacts feature. Because anytime I try to load it up, it tries to load 40,000 contacts. It's like I can't use it. It's totally useless. And I haven't found a way to clean it. But maybe that's the thing that happens. If I join things now and it attaches to my phone, it'll actually just ping 10, 20, 40,000 people, and then suddenly things happen. So I don't even know how to fix that. Maybe this problem that I've had for like 5-10 years now, maybe even 10 years now, hope it may actually come back to being a good thing at some point. Anyway, segueing on. Aside from Clubhouse, conversational, real-time content, give us a practical how-to on that. I'm a TA person. I'm listening to this. I'm thinking, all right, great. I'd love to do real-time content, Christina. Fantastic. Like, what do I do to get to the point where this is happening for me in my business?
Okay, so it's very much about taking an event approach. So I've been talking to someone this week about their employer branding. And one of the things we're looking at doing is essentially creating like a series of panel discussions. They can create some noise around, they'll live stream them on Facebook. People can drop in, ask the questions. And it is it's not a piece of video content with, your SaaS developer saying how wonderful it is to work for that company. It's real conversation, and using things. If you're live streaming, using something like StreamYard, someone leaves a comment, you can bring the comment up on screen. Like I say, you become part of that experience.
I think the main thing I'm getting from you here, Christina, is this concept of the audience contributes to the experience. That's what they want. It's not about consumption. It's about contribution. So we as marketers or people who are producing stuff out there, you've got to open it out to have conversations with people. So that means less, if you like, mental and time budget towards building the content, more budget spent on engaging with people. So one of the big mistakes I see companies make is that they spend all of their time and effort creating a great piece of content. They push it out there and they never talk to people that engage in the content. And I'm saying they've misallocated their time. They need to spend 50% less time on producing and polishing, and that time needs to be then spent post publication so that they can interact and engage with people. Okay, listen, we're going to move on quickly. Martin, I'm going to kick you off, I'm afraid. We've got to bring other people on. We're running a little bit, or we're going to be well over this, by the way, guys. But we're going to try and get this as close as we can. We are going to go. I think, Martin, I'll see you later. We're going to go. Us bit unceremonious booting off, wasn't it? Sorry, Martin. We're going to go. I think it was it Joanne? I think it was Joanne was the next person. So we're going to talk DE&I think, with Joanne Lockwood. I hope she's still there. Is it Joe Lockwood? It's Joe Lockwood. Yeah. Okay. There we go. And we're going to talk about what's happening in the DE&I space. And I dare say a great deal of communication externally and stuff like that will be a big part of that conversation as well. But let's see how we go with that. Yeah, super interesting on, there she is. Oh, hello.
Hey, how you doing?
I'm good, Joe. How are you doing?
Yeah, not bad. In my little polar bear enclosure, wandering around.
It is cold, I have to say. Like, I've made the mistake of wearing just a white shirt. This is I feel it's my brand now, wearing this. I'm always wearing a white shirt. It's a mistake. I should be wearing the brand should be a hoodie or something, because it's quite cold. Yeah. Anyway, Joe, listen, for the people who don't know you, can you quickly introduce yourself, who you are, what it is you do?
Yeah. I describe myself as an inclusion and belonging specialist. So I work with organisations throughout the UK, Europe, and elsewhere, advising them on inclusion and belonging strategies, employee experience. I work with a lot of talent acquisition teams, HR teams, learning development, trying to kickstart their D&I program and help them find their why of D&I.
Amazing. So let's go straight into it, Joe. Give us a specific prediction in this space for 2021. What's going to happen? In fact, give us two. One thing that you think is going to happen, then give us an outrageous thing that is out there that might occur.
Well, I'm going to kind of give you so let's talk about where we've come from. So 2020, we saw this massive shift with Black Lives Matter, COVID, where we started moving away from performative, where we actually started being authentic and realizing that we couldn't just use the talk. We've started this immense focus on employee well-being, the shift to remote working, dealing with redundancies, furloughs, and great organizations started to shine bright. Their branding was starting to be reflective of how they're treating their people. And then we saw this rapid hiring of D&I teams, lots of HR people filling the gap, lots of junior roles, many non-strategic. So what I'd like to see is the inclusion and belonging specialists become more than just bean counters, counting how many women and counting how many black people that we've got, looking at pay gaps. We need to do more than this. So I want to see inclusion and belonging specialists with a seat at the table, right at the top table, driving culture, driving strategy, and driving the engagement, the employee engagement, the candidate engagement, the experience. And that is seen by the boards as being a core part of their business. So that's what I really want to see happen.
Do you think it's going to happen now?
Well, we've been talking about this for many, many years. I think now, one of the other things is I really hope the word unprecedented was consigned to the past. But now we have unprecedented Brexit. We have unprecedented vaccines. Now we have unprecedented stuff going on in America. So I still think we live in this time where we're breaking new ground. But I do think we've got a momentum happening with what's been going on in the last year. COVID is not over. We know COVID is not over. By the time we get vaccinated, it's going to be July at the best. We're talking about another spike in the autumn. We don't know how long the vaccine is going to be effective for. We have to revaccinate. We've got to bring people back from remote environments, keep them remote, looking at the working environment, how that's going to change. So all this is going on. So the reality is we have to deal with this stuff. So organizations are going to have to start thinking more strategically about their people and the experience they're giving people.
What do you think the impact of remote working and this oscillating situation that we seem to be having, I think particularly in the UK, but I suspect a lot of countries have a version of this where, it follows the pandemic in the sense there's waves coming in, there's waves of lockdown, waves of, going back to the office, etc. What do you think is the single most significant impact of that rhythm to DE&I?
I think the biggest significant impact at the moment is the disproportionate impact on the people who are primary educators, care providers for either their children or elderly relatives, which inevitably often are women. I think the disproportionate effect on women is the significant thing from this pandemic. So in a way, it's setting back the careers of women generations, and that's the biggest challenge we've got to face now. How do we re-engage and give people time to be educators, to be caregivers, to be the home admin, and still allow them to do their jobs without having major anxieties, without major pressures?
You know what? I think that's one of the real challenges in business, because we know the degree of, if you like, domestic responsibility is going to be very variable according to multiple factors, right? Whether you do have family, how many kids you have makes an impact, right? I mean,
and
you might
their
have
age, their age as well.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I remember Heidi Wassini, a friend of ours. I think she has twins, and she was saying, "Thank God I got twins," because she can do it together, right? Because basically, it's like, imagine those kids just being 18 months separate. And they have different learning cycles, different type of things. It's like 2 projects suddenly. Instead, you can't scale that up. So businesses aren't set up to think about this. We all think of workers as atomic units without any kind of life outside of work, and we treat them all the same, and we measure them all the same. But if we're now in a remote environment and people have to have these additional responsibilities that they can't divest themselves from, then treating them the same is actually going to be very discriminatory. So it's a huge set of challenges there for us.
It's what you're saying at the beginning. I think with Adam, when you're talking about, you can't. Was it with Martin? You say you can't have these 2 personalities. You can't have your work and your personal. You can't separate your Twitter or your whatever. And I think what we're doing is we are bringing our entire selves. We're bringing our whole house to work. We're bringing our home to work now, and that's a major change. And people have to be authentic. They have to show vulnerability, and we talk about being in the same storm on different boats. We have a shared enemy or a shared challenge we're all working, which allows us to have that vulnerability, and we can now talk to people with that shared experience, which we've never had before.
Yeah, I think that's very, very true. It's an opportunity, isn't it, to be more honest? And I think we're not going to let that go. I've got to be fair. I think most people feel, okay, this is better, rather than pretending. Okay, Joe, give us one outlandish thing real quick, because I need to bring Bass on. He's telling me he's got no time, and I totally get it. So I'm going to bring him on now. But as we're talking, as I'm trying to do this, give us the one outlandish prediction that you think, might have an outside chance of actually happening.
Outlandish thing. Organizations suddenly realize that the well-being of their teams and their staff is the most important thing they can think about strategically at their board. That's an outlandish thing, rather than pay lip service to it or bury it.
It is sad that is outlandish. But there's stuff of this type going on. I was like, things like, Saudi Arabia giving an AI sort of human rights and stuff. But anyway, moving on very quickly. Bas van der Hatta, you're on screen. I know that you have a deadline, so I don't want to spend a huge amount of time saying yes, no, maybe. Give us your prediction, Bas, on assessments. That's your expertise. What do you think is going to happen?
Well, one of the things I've written down several predictions, but I can't give them all in the short amount of time we've got. One of the things which goes back to Adam's first prediction. I mean, Adam said, we're going to have a second recession. It's not out of the woods yet. He said, let's be nice to each other. I do expect, and it depends on the countries you are in, an incredible increase of applicants, mainly in white-collar jobs. I mean, we've seen it in some parts of the world where they didn't rescue the businesses. I mean, in Germany and in the Netherlands, the governments we've actually had the lowest number of businesses going under for ages, basically because all normal businesses that would have gone under are now surviving on government aid. The government aid is taking down. We will probably have massive redundancies in the first and second quarter of this year. We will see a lot of white-collar workers, higher volumes of white-collar workers applications, and we will simply need to see this number of pre-selection tooling increase. I've seen it, excellent examples over the years. I mean, I've seen Vervo do wonderful things for healthcare in Australia this year because they couldn't have job interviews anymore. And they cut out the entire job interview and just screened people on talent, and hey, better people were turning up, which is just really, and more diverse people, which is, the most amazing thing is every time I see a company actually starting selecting on talent, we see the diversity increase. Because guess what? Talent doesn't run by gender lines, doesn't run by age lines, doesn't run by ethnicity lines. So
what percentage of businesses do you think will simply get rid of the interview? Like they've bought into the idea of, okay, we're going to do assessment, we're going to do this and this. Interview not happening ever.
I right now I don't see a lot of them. I mean, it's going to be 1% at the most. But as soon as they start seeing the predictions fit, I mean, when the first time when Harvard was introduced, that's about 7 years ago, they started saying, listen, these are the percentages of the chances of a person being a great contact center agent. And at first everybody was like, we don't believe them and we're still going to get the 50% out there because the resume is better and stuff like that. And the data just showed that if your predictions are accurate, and so they first started getting rid of the resumes completely because they saw it had no additional value on the situational judgment tests and the cognitive tests Harvard were doing. And then a couple of them said at a certain point, okay, so the only times we're failing is when an interviewer is actually saying this guy is better than the algorithm did. Maybe we should cut out the interviewer here because apparently there's a bias in there. So, but not in 2021, period.
You know what? I think you're right, but I also think it's going to happen more for certainly newer businesses, and depending on the sort of relationships people want to have. For instance, a lot of the new businesses, entrepreneur owner, one person, they may have their first hire or their first partner, or whatever it might be. I reckon they're going to start doing a lot more of the work trialing, a lot more of the let's just work on a project first, before jumping into bed with a long-term relationship, which is the reason why we put all of these assessments in, because we know it's such a big commitment to have to go in and to have that permanent arrangement. So the rise, if you like, of alternative ways of interacting with people in terms of employment, I think will increase the use of technology and also reduce the in-person interview. That's
another prediction I would like to share, which really links with what Joe's talking about, diversity and inclusion. I expect there will be talk. I'm not sure because it's government if it's going to happen in 21. I mean, they took about 12 years to get GDPR actually as a law in, but is about a diversity and inclusion law. And it's going to be not as much about DE&I as it is about fair selection. Select based on the things that matter. And I expect there to be a lot of talk in wake of everything which we've seen in 2020, Black Lives Matter, and everything which happened there. From an EU perspective, there will be a lot of talk about fairer selection. I know that in Belgium, they're now trialing with blind applications, with applying with different names in the same resume in order to screen out companies if they're actually selecting fairly. I expect results from that to be terrible because we've seen them in every academic research. They've sucked. And I'm going to expect for the European Union to say every company needs to do skill-based selection. So we're going to see an uptake from that. And one of my other predictions is linked to this. So this is one prediction. We're going to see laws on skill-based selection. Is that some of the major ATSs will start buying some of the major assessment providers simply in order to be able to give this kind of compliance. And I'm not saying that's the best solution there's going to be, because to be honest, I'd rather have a best of breed selection tool than the one that SuccessFactors actually bought probably. But we're going to see some buying tooling by ATSs, as well as on the back of this, some massive investment in new tech tools.
Yeah, I think that's a really good prediction, man. I mean, we don't know how long sort of these cycles are going to happen, but what you're saying is there will be legal pressure to big ATS providers to be compliant, and the best way to do that is to buy a tool which will say, hey, we're going to de-bias the selection process. So that's an interesting phenomena. Okay, Bas, one more if you got time, because I know you got to go.
One more prediction. I'm actually think one of the things we've seen now is work from home is moving towards work from anywhere. I think this is going to be something to stay. I actually read an American research yesterday that I think 2/3 of all of the Americans are now expecting that said in a research that if their company expects them to come back to the office, they want a pay increase, which is really interesting how something became the new normal. Or all of a sudden it's like, if you want me back in the office, I've now decided that working from home and working from anywhere is a right, which for me is really surprising how in 1 year, or actually in 9 months, we can go from, oh, this is really cool, to this is now my right, and you're going to pay me extra if you want me back.
You know what? It's also a very economic calculation as well, because people are saving on the commute and the car parking and the rail fare and all that type of stuff. That's like £3,000 to £4,000 if you're in the UK commuting to London. That's a huge amount of money. So a quick comment to the people watching this, actually, if your boss told you you're going to have to come back to the office, will you try and negotiate a pay rise? I mean, do you think you're going to do that? Comment, let me know what you feel, because I'd really love to understand what the sentiment of the audience is.
To get on with this prediction. So if it's going to be work from everywhere, and we've already seen in the Netherlands, I've recently talked to the CEO of our biggest housing site. He said, listen, we see a lot of views from Amsterdam to rural areas, because KPMG, ING, and a couple of other companies have said, we don't expect you to come back to the office more than 2 days a week. All of a sudden, rural areas in the Netherlands, because going to Amsterdam 1 or 2 days a week is actually pretty easy from rural areas. You don't mind those 4 hours traveling time. You do mind them every day. So they're broadening their recruitment scope, and what's them to keep it from broadening across borders. But then all of a sudden, you have no idea how good the Polytech University in Kathmandu is, education-wise. So all of a sudden, selecting on resume isn't even going to work, because
this is why we're going to do the assessments even more so, because the shift to
also
remote
for blue-collar workers. But this will take this isn't a 2021 prediction, but we're going to think about this in 2021, because we're not going to hire across borders, because there's a lot of other things going on.
Yeah, indeed. And there's lots of theories about where the future remote and the shift to offshoring and all that kind of stuff. We'll talk about that in another show. Listen, we've got to move on, because we've got loads more people to bring on. I want to do a big bang, and I have to get rid of everyone on screen. I beg your pardon. I was hoping that everyone would have more to say, but I've realized it's already 3 o'clock. So it's, what the hell is that?
Stick of dynamite.
Christ, that was I wonder what the hell you brought out on screen there.
I was like, oh my God.
Is this our first not safe for work moment on Brainfood? But thank God, even that is a big piece of dynamite. You may not be that good. Anyway, listen, I'll catch up with all of you soon, because this is the first time we've seen each other, so we're going to have to connect very shortly. But I'm going to try and get everyone off screen now and bring on 3 people to replace. So thank you very much, Joe. Thank you very much, Chris. Thank you very much, Bas. Everyone goes boom, boom, boom. We are going to go and bring in Louise Trials. We're going to go with, she's not even there. That's okay. How about we go, in fact, Louise is there. She's in a different name. Okay, Emma Mirrington, she's there. And I hope James Osborne is here. I don't know whether he's still around, but if he is, I'm going to try and bring him on. There he is. Okay, great. Louise, if you're there, please make yourself known, because I can't invite you. Okay, great. There's 2 Louises. I think that's the problem. On registered on this. And I'm trying to figure out which one is which. Oh, sorry. Hey guys, how you doing?
Good. How you doing?
Good, thank you.
So listen, as I'm trying to get Louise Triance on screen, can you two quickly introduce yourself to the audience? Who are you, Emma? And firstly,
hi everyone, Emma Merrington from the firm, so stands for the Forum for In-House Recruitment Managers, and we are a membership organisation for talent acquisition professionals.
Cool stuff. I'm going to share the link to you and your amazing network, so people should go and join that if you're an in-house recruiter. Okay, how about you, James? Who are you and what do you do?
I'm James Osborne. I'm the chairman of the Recruitment Network, and we are an organisation, a membership body or a membership community for recruitment leaders, staffing agency leaders in the UK and across the world.
Amazing. And by the way, you two are two of the best at doing what you do. I have to say, this is genuinely the case. I think I've had the opportunity of kind of connecting a little bit around the edges in both of your communities, and both of them are excellent, you know, really, really high value, and people, I think, get a lot from them. But it's also great to get you two on to talk about it, because between the pair of you, you might be able to give us a decent view as to where recruitment is looking. So one from the in-house side, one from the agency side. Let's go with you first of all, James, because I wonder whether agencies might have, like, I've been quite pessimistic. It's like, oh my goodness, agencies are going to get absolutely wrecked, because, you know, the first thing you want to do is switch off these expensive fees that you're getting from third parties, etc. What do you think is going to happen in 2021 from the agency side?
Yeah, I can only base it on what I'm seeing happening at the moment and the trends that we're seeing so far. Agencies are needed as much today as they have ever been before. Most of the members of the Recruitment Network are doing incredibly well. They had a tough year, don't get me wrong, in 2020. Back end of the year, things got really good again. They were flat out busy. I've never seen a year end like it ended last year from a busyness point of view. I've never seen a year start as it started on Monday. With how much business is going on right now. So I'm very, very optimistic about the future for agency world.
Well, what about all of this chat about second recession, Brexit happening, and, you know, everything? You're not seeing this particularly in the audience that you're dealing with? No,
and I'm sorry, but you know me, Hung, I'm Mr. Optimistic and Mr. Positive, and you've got no chance of making me feel down today, because it ain't going to happen. I think honestly, from an economical point of view, I think we're actually fine. And I know that's a lot of people are going to sort of throw an egg at me for saying that, but, you know, I think we're going to see a huge economic boom in 2021. I'm absolutely convinced by it. I think more people actually have got more money in their pockets to spend. There's a real pent up desire to spend more money. I think governments are going to want to spend their way out of with the situation that we're in at the moment. There's going to be huge euphoria and post-COVID confidence when that comes about. So we're all predicting certainly a Q2, if not an H2 economic boom across the UK in particular. That's where we're going to focus on. An agency side and the growth of recruitment and staffing is going to be a big part of that. So yeah, I'm very positive.
That's really interesting. And you know what? There has been a lot of money put into people's pockets as a result of government kind of support and all the rest of it. And obviously that's replaced wages. So it's not necessarily a net plus, but it has meant that in terms of hours worked to money in, there's a lot of people that actually have had that experience. And I do, by the way, understand a lot of people that have not had that sort of experience either. Freelancers in particular and stuff like that have had poor support. But we're talking about a certain segment of the population, which is not insignificant, that have had 80% of their salary paid, generally speaking, but they haven't necessarily had to spend 40 hours of work to do that. So they've got a lot more free time. And I wonder whether that may translate into consumer spending. Okay, quickly on to you, Emma. What are you reading from the in-house market? You know, the community that you're talking to, how are they feeling about growing their businesses?
Cool. Well, I've got 4 predictions for you. I'll keep it snappy because I know that Neil's got a sharp exit at 1:15. So for us, for our members, big focus on DE&I, unsurprisingly, this year. So I think we're going to see a lot of specific commitments from people in terms of sort of gender, BAME targets, etc. Secondly, capability, huge focus for people. So from a recruiter's perspective, they're investing in softer skills, which we've talked about before. So things like sourcing, business partnering, EVP, employer brand, but also investing in hiring manager capability. So things like DE&I training, unconscious bias, candidate engagement, really important. I do have one negative negative perspective, which is around the impact of COVID and Brexit on future talent programs. ISE showed that we had sort of 29% less work experience in internship programs. So I'm slightly concerned about sort of the impact on young people this year. I hope that I'm proved wrong with that. And finally, my last prediction really is around Clubhouse. So we've talked about that before, about the year of the voice in 2021. I think it could be really interesting for talent. So I think watch this space.
Yeah, really good breakdown. And you know what? The young person entry level, I think that is probably something we need to really think very hard about, because they've just had this really strange and horrible experience of, firstly, exams not happening, graduations, what's going on there? No one knows, like graduate hiring schemes being suspended, all these types of things going on. There's going to be not a generation, but at least a cohort of people that are going to be very disturbed. What do you see is the best thing recruiters can do to support that?
Yeah, so it's really hard to offer virtual work experience and internship programs, but any organisations watching this, I would just plead you to really think about how you can do this cleverly and still give those young people a chance, because work experience has a huge impact on their future employability opportunities, and that's the biggest thing that you can do right now.
You know what? We need to think about giving people these virtual experiences, don't we? Where virtual internships and stuff, that needs to be happening. Okay, Neil, listen, I brought you on quick because I've had word you've only got 5 minutes, and I wanted to make sure we at least get you on screen for a little bit. Neil, quickly, for the people who don't know you, quickly introduce yourself, sir.
Yeah, Neil Carberry, Chief Executive of the REC, which is the UK's industry body for recruitment and HR services. 3,300 agency members, 10,000 individual recruiters as members.
Cool. And I think between the three of you on screen, we're probably covering, as much as we can cover about what the recruitment industry is looking at. So from your view, Neil, I especially love by the way, the REC Outlook posts and stuff like that have been really, really valuable for the industry. So thank you for that. I think, by the way, people should totally read and keep updated on that. If you want to share a link to those things, Neil, feel free to do it. But basically, the REC is publishing, I think, quarterly updates in terms of what the recruitment volumes are looking at and things of that type. If you're in the UK, you really need to be paying attention to those posts. Okay, so we've had optimism from James, as you might expect. But from you, Neil, what's your view as what's happening on for the recruitment market generally in 2021?
So I think the recruitment market, we know it's an amplified version of what the economy is doing. We know we're first in, first out, generally speaking. I'm absolutely seeing in the UK what James is seeing. So my prediction for you is that the temp market in the UK will be bigger in 2021 than it was in 2019. So we'll have full recovery and more in the temp market. I think clients will be quicker into temp than they will be into perm. I think perm will be slower to recover. But I do get exactly the point that we've heard already, which is the bottom third of income in the UK, of the income distribution in the UK, really tough times, and there's a lot to do to help people through. Top 2/3, a lot of people are sitting on cash. The British economy is a consumer economy. I think those things will pull through to other countries which have done big support for the workforce through this. And I think for our listeners in the US, the really big thing is, well, how much support is going to flow into the US economy over the next month or two? Because rather like the investments the US made in 08-09, that's going to be the driver of long-term growth.
You're talking about this 2,000 per month type of thing. If Biden gets in, and it looks like, by the way, obviously we've been, observing the things in the US with, all kinds of like amazement and shock. But a big kind of primer to all of that was, of course, the Democrats winning, or at least establishing parity in the Senate, which means that basically the Democrats can control all three branches of government, which means that they can do radical stuff.
For West Virginia, it's very easy to apply European levels of party discipline to Congress. I wouldn't get too carried away, but I do think that as long as there's great data today on the vaccine positively affecting these new strains. Which means I do think if we can get the delivery right, and I've said to ministers this week, vaccine delivery as your number one economic policy right now, because really we can do the rest. Just set us free to do it at the right moment. So I'm quite optimistic about where we're going. One big thing I think that certainly agency recruiters need to be thinking about, I think in-house as well, is thinking more about how we buy technology. Really interested in the chatbot stuff earlier. The REC's got a chatbot, and we're a stuffy old trade association, so if you haven't, it's time to catch up. But I think it's more about getting someone in your team, on your staff, who doesn't have the agency problem that vendors might have, to advise you on what you need. Because the problem with the recruitment tech stack is not that it's small, but actually that it's enormous. And picking the right stuff and having someone in your team who understands it, so you know what you're buying, because there's going to be an investment boom this year, both in terms of M&A in the sector. I know James is talking to a lot of people about that. I'm talking to a lot of people about that. But there's also going to be a tech investment boom. There always is before a big speed up in the economy. So if you're going to spend some money making sure you get it right.
Okay, so just want to touch on that in a little bit, the M&A side. So obviously there's been a variable impact in terms of the agency market. Some companies have done better than others. Recessions are always a big test for your business basics, and it means that there'll be consolidation, there'll be opportunities that way and things of that sort. Where do you see the consolidation happening most? And this is a question for everyone, but particularly the two that understand the agency side a little bit with a focus.
Well, we're already seeing a consolidation anyway. This was happening for the last couple of years between the search sort of side of the industry and the lower end of the industry, or coming together, more contingent side coming closer together. Without doubt, the M&A market is really buoyant at the moment and moving fast. I think one of the situations this creates, it does a bit of a clear out job. It sort of clears out organizations that potentially thought they could be exitable or could be bought or did have a value when actually they didn't. And as you quite rightly said, I think it shows their resilience in a market like this. Then what it also does, it really tests those businesses as well, the ones that are sticking around. So I think people now, and you talk about the technology, and Neil touched on this, which is absolutely spot on. And the automation piece here is really, really important to the recruitment industry. I think we, for the first time properly, are really starting to value time and efficiency more than we've ever valued it before. And I think people who are looking at acquisitions in the industry are looking at organizations who are embracing the power of automation to increase better efficiency, give us more time back, utilize time, make your businesses scalable, and so on and so forth.
Agree with all that. I think two other trends. One, I think clients are increasingly interested in transparency about their supply chains, and they're increasingly interested in partners. I constantly sort of talk to client audiences by saying, well, why do you hire the cheapest lawyer? Do you hire the cheapest accountant? No, you probably don't. And that's a transition I think the market is going through, and we've seen that in MSP version 1 and MSP version 2, and I think there's more to come of that. But alongside that kind of change in the client relationship, I think there are a lot of businesses that have actually had, for want of a better term, quite a good crisis. If you're in logistics, food, you're already highly automated because you're doing big numbers of people into those sectors. Most of those businesses had better November and December 2020s than they had November and December 2019. Yeah. There is cash there, and those businesses are looking at some of those, not distressed assets, but challenged assets in other parts of the industry, and thinking about, well, how do I grow and build the coverage of the organization, not just organically this year, although we are seeing lots of startup activity, but also by acquisition.
Okay, final one. I'm going to go to Emma on tech in a bit, but I want to just ask a final question on the agency side. What is the number of agencies currently in the UK, and where do you think it's going to be at the end of 2021? Like, what is the growth and absolute number of recruitment agency companies?
I'll go first. You go first.
Well, you go first, and I'll copy exactly what you're about to say.
So we think that there's basically been about 30,000 agencies in the UK for the last few years. It's like dropping our survey published just before Christmas. Now, what I'd say is you don't have to be very big or particularly clever to be included in that 30,000. So the way I view it is, I think there are probably 5,000 to 6,000 chunky firms in the UK, and I think over time that number will gently drop. But I think the size of the industry in terms of the GVA will grow. And look out next month, we've got a fantastic piece of work coming out from the REC, which is about the difference recruiters make, and it's quite big.
Amazing. How about you, James? What are your thoughts on that? I mean, do you have a different type of insight from the community that you're speaking to?
Well, from the size point of view, no,
yeah.
I think it's spot on. There's always been numbers banter around between 30 and 40,000. It goes up and down. There's a huge startup community at the moment. That's massive. You always get that. Many of those won't make it through and go back into another role. But generally, I think, when you look at it, there's about 10,000 recruitment companies we think are serious grown-up recruitment businesses in the UK currently, more or less. There's no disrespect to the one-person recruitment businesses sort of working, well, we're all working from home, but the ones working from home type of stuff. But the ones that have got some form of some sort of traction, a certain level of growth, then I would say there's probably about 10,000, and that will change. And those numbers of 10,000 will change continuously, because there'll be businesses that won't make it through, will be bought out, will consolidate, and also startups coming through as well.
Yeah, amazing. Okay, Emma, thanks for being patient on this. I wanted to just dive into the automation side in terms of like how people are thinking about automating from an internal recruiter point of view, because we've had to suffer, unfortunately, retrenchment in the staffing. We've had to let people go. We've seen a lot of in-house recruiters had to, move on to different jobs and what have you. I'm seeing some kind of uptick, like people are seeming to get new jobs again, which is fantastic. But Brainfood is coming out on Sunday. There's about 25 new jobs there, which is an amazing thing to see. But I think also we're going to start implementing the technology things and start making sure we're probably going to do more with less people. Where do you see where do you think the money's going to go? People are buying tech. Where do you think they're going to be spending it in-house side?
So just to back what the others have said around automation, I think that's absolutely key for the in-house recruitment market, but as an enabler of candidate experience. And that's where sort of some of the difficulties can lie, because what we absolutely don't want to lose out is sort of some of the personal touch, the empathy, which Anna has just popped a note on in the chat, because empathy has been so important for people in 2021. It's been such a tough year for many people. So just how we use automation as an enabler for candidate experience. But equally in lockdown, we've seen a lot of our members, while the volumes have been less busy, they've been looking at their tech stack and looking at projects. So I think we'll see some things coming out of that too.
Yeah, go ahead, James.
Well, I was just going to add on, and I was just touching on, I think it was Anna Milbank who made a comment in the thing about automation's important, but never lose our human empathy. Absolutely agree with that. And I think when we talk about automation, to do it right, this is about the automation of process, repeatable process, not about, I think, interaction with people. I think that's two different things. I think the more we can automate process, the more time we can spend doing proper human interaction, which makes it even better.
Yeah.
That's exactly right. It's again the interview logistics we talked about. The all of the scheduling, the typing into computer, the sort of updating records and all that type of stuff. No human being needs to be doing. We'll make mistakes doing it, so the less humans do it, the better. But where we need to play a part is exactly the face-to-face interaction.
And Hung, if I may, can I just touch on one other trend, which I think is really important with this, which is, one of the things I'm really excited about. I'm a massive fan of the work from anywhere, work from home type stuff, and I know Bas touched on it earlier on as well. We're seeing a massive shift in that at the moment, which is superb, and we've done some really interesting stuff with some guys in America, the guys from GitLab, for example, and some of the things that they're up to. I think the great thing about the work from anywhere opportunity, or that's going to come from all this, is that the net when it comes to recruitment is now seriously widened. So no longer are we recruiting within 2 hours of a client or an office is location. We're doing it within a 2-hour time zone. That's completely different. That opens up opportunities for so many people who were never able to have those opportunities before. So people who couldn't go to an office now have an opportunity to work for those companies. That is brilliant. That's going to create more work, which is fantastic, more opportunities. And then the second thing is then we're going to have the ability now to use automation, use some of this technology to help us cast a much, much wider net than we've ever done before. I think that's a massive shift in the industry, which is really exciting.
Yeah, it's almost like a globalization of the talent pool, and certainly, as you say, I mean, coming from back in the day, you had to commute, didn't you? Or you had to relocate to a big city in order to get yourself an opportunity. But maybe we don't need to do that as much, or if at all, if we get this right. People can be available for work wherever it is. Okay, listen, you've been amazing. We're going to have to move on. Thank you so much for your time, you two. I really appreciate your insights. I'll make sure everyone kind of is aware of your networks as well, because I do really respect what you're doing. And hopefully we'll get the chance to connect shortly, sort of later this year. It'd be great to find out a little bit more about what your plans are and how we can work together. Great.
Yeah, fantastic. And Hung, just one back at you. Seriously, well done with the brain food. It's absolutely superb. The stuff on a Sunday is excellent. I love it.
Well, thank you both for your support on that. It
we
really
need to see brain food on Clubhouse. I think you'd be perfect on that. Hung.
You know what? I'm on it. But whether I do brain food on there, I don't know. But we'll see. I'll see you there if you're there, Emma.
Brilliant.
Cool. All right. I'll catch you later, you two.
Bye.
Cheers. All right, Louise, if you're still there, I'm going to bring you on. I think it's Recruiter Zone. And you're going to help me finish off the show. Wow, it's been like a massive roller coaster. We're hitting like nearly 90 minutes. So thank you for staying with us. There she is. Louise, how are you?
I'm fine, thank you. Thank you for having me on. Am I the last one? Is there anyone else after me?
That's it. I'm knackered. And to be honest with you, I'm very pleased that it's just you and me now. Because we can have a chat and about community and stuff, which is super important. And by the way, I think there was a third Louise that had your picture on it. So there was like another account. It was like, for some reason I couldn't invite you on. I was freaking out. But anyway, at least you're here. Louise, for the people who don't know you, I don't know how many people that is, but I'm sure everyone knows you already. But quickly intro yourself, who you are, what it is you do.
So I run UK Recruiter. So it's a community, which is what we're talking about. Community site for recruiters. Been doing that for 20 plus years. Like to think that I know a fair bit about what's going on in the recruitment market space. But also I run events. I've been doing online events, live broadcasts like this for 7 years. And more recently, I've started doing some work with Crowdcast, not in the recruitment space, but as their customer support lead, which is why I was slightly laughing at you not being able to find me and invite me on.
What's
that about?
I'm incompetent. I mean, I've embraced it. I've tried to get better. I just don't have it in me.
No, you're great.
But anyway, listen, Louise, you've been like one of these big community and network building and events people, I think, for a long time. I want to talk particularly about events, actually. Because we've had the 2020 was just an amazing experience in the sense of suddenly we had to do everything online. We've learned a lot about online events, mainly that, some of them are not that good, but there's some opportunities for it to get better. I wanted to get your views on where you think the event space is going to be in 2021 for us in recruiting.
Cool. So there's two parts to this, as you've just touched on. There's the in real life and there's the online. And I think that we've no idea when we're going to go back to in real life events. And by that, I'm talking about business events, networking events. I mean, not concerts. I'm talking about stuff in the HR and recruitment space. So even the very small events, even the idea of getting together a round table event, I just can't put a date on that. And I think that my sense is that when we can, people really want to. I did a quick straw poll in the chat. People were keen, apart from Animal, to come back together to see each other face to face. But how is that going to work? And as an event organizer or an attendee, how do you plan for that? Are we going to need to have immunity passports? Stephen O'Donnell thinks that people are going to have to show evidence that they've been immunized before they can go to a physical event. Is that what we're looking at? What do you think?
Yeah, it's really interesting. I mean, in person, I love in-person events. Obviously, I've been to some of yours; they've been fantastic, and there's others that I'm looking at that are a real shame that they're gone. But the challenges are going to be very, very tough for exactly these reasons. Like, how do you deal with liability, for instance? I'm sure if you put on an event, they're going to tell you, oh, you need to be sure that you do X, Y, and Z. And then suddenly you have to do X, Y, and Z. That's massive overhead. What happened? Did someone sue you? If you do all of those things, they get infected, something happens, what is going on? So I think it's a really tough thing. But maybe there's a way where the online event space becomes better.
I think that.
Where do you think that's going to be? Because we know that sitting in front of a screen looking at talks for all day is not going to be the way to do it. So where do you see the online event space going?
I think people are getting better. I think that the issue we had is that a lot of people tried to take their in-person event and just cram it into an online format. So how did I do this in 2019? Let me just try to replicate all of that again. How do I have an exhibitor booth? How do I have somebody giving a keynote? And that's quite difficult. It's difficult for organisers. Speakers don't like it. And for sponsors, it's been dreadful. So my personal opinion is it's very difficult to give sponsors value taking what was an in-person event online. It's a lot easier to give attendees value through great content. So that's been one of the challenges. And I don't think that you can ignore that it's almost impossible to get the networking part right. People ask me in my Crowdcast capacity, how do you build a community on a site like Crowdcast? Well, we've got the chat in the side, and that's been nice and active. We've got your poll. Let me just see who won that poll. Oh, it's me. So we've got your...
Was that you voting with your multiple accounts, Louise?
Yeah. Honestly, it wasn't, but it'd be very funny if I had. And you've got the ask a question functionality. So yes, you can do a bit of engagement, but we're not networking. I want to finish this event and go for a drink with Emma, with James, with Neil, with you, with Stephen, and we can't. And you can't get away from that. And I don't have an answer to that. So I don't have a prediction for that, apart from the fact we need to get back to in-person events to make that part work again.
Yeah,
I'm afraid.
That's a really clear view. I think you're right, but I do have some optimism on the online experience, simply because I've tried to dive into those digital spaces where people seem to have networking-like experiences. And it's a little bit like, gaming is a good example of that, where there seems to be a lot of interaction. People have never met, but they do seem to develop good friendships there. Ourselves a good example, back in the Twitter days and what have you, it is possible to get those relationships in. Is there a way to do it? I think some of the new tooling out there might be able to help us. We'll see how some of the audience members, guests, should I say, actually put on some really good networking style events. Joe Lockwood did a really good one.
Yes.
Were you there?
So that was on Discord.
It was on Discord.
Yeah, the channel a little bit like Slack, but you see, lots of recruiters aren't using channels like Slack or Discord. They're not our native platforms, and that's one of the problems. Is you're asking people to move somewhere else. You're asking them to create another flaming profile like this Clubhouse thing, which I did hear about, but I haven't been invited to yet. You're going to have to create a new platform. You're going to have to spend time there, and we don't want to be doing that. The bottom line is we're lazy. Some of us are imaginative, ahead of the curve, but globally we're lazy.
Yeah, I would say we're lazy, but I wouldn't condemn us for that, because we're
time poor.
Yeah, we're time poor, and we've got other stuff to do. So when you have to set up yet another thing, it becomes very difficult. So I totally understand it. But I do think there's some opportunities for us to do less sort of, I think watching someone do a talk is really tough to do. I'm not sure whether that is something that people want to do anymore. It needs to be interactive. Roundtables I'm finding to be really good. These types of chats and what have you we're doing now, Brainfood Live, I think are very positive. Maybe there's another networking thing that we could try as well.
But Hung, the space is swamped. And when we talk about community, if we do get onto that, it's the same. So you're massively successful because you got in here early. If somebody else was trying to make a noise in this space, it's really difficult for them to build that presence online. Yes, we should all be using video. We should be doing LinkedIn Lives, things like that. But it's you and me who are showing up in people's feeds every week. It's not the newbies. And that's a real challenge too.
It is, and there's a little bit of a first mover advantage there, but it's also not impossible. I think it's almost a case where you've got to have a niche to what you're doing, and that's got to be probably more narrow than you think. But remember that when we're digital, it means that your audience is global. So if you think that, I think almost everyone on the planet, there's something like 5 billion people that have an online device now. So the audience is big enough. You've just got to have that niche and persist with it. But I totally get what you're saying. There's a first mover advantage there. And it's, your network will continue to compound as you get there. Okay, let's talk about the community side. You and I are both big fans of it. You've been like a really early starter in this. Going really to the beginning when Adam was talking about, we need to have the vendors are going to start doing this. Recruitment agencies are going to start doing this. What are your predictions on that? Recruitment agencies starting communities and ecosystems? Is that happening?
Probably, but what I'm seeing, which I think we're more successful, is consolidation of the really great ones we've got. So I think that what we're all doing is we're finding our tribe. And I would have never, ever said that sentence 2 years ago. I'd have rather poke myself in the eye. But we are feeling isolated at home or overwhelmed at home. We've got our work network, and some of them are great supporters, some of them aren't. But we're trying to find other places to be with people like us. So we're reaching out to networks like the Firm, which has always been highly successful, and to the recruitment network and the REC, and we're wanting more. We're wanting more community from them. Rachel's just said something about speed peer-to-peer networking. People loving it, and that is totally, I believe in that. So from a community perspective as recruiters, yes, I think we're finding places that we can be with people like us and people who aren't like us, who can introduce us to new things. That's a really cool part of it. Recruiters trying to build communities, I think it takes quite a lot of effort. I think they absolutely should. What you just said earlier, Hung, is the key to this, is you find your niche, your area of expertise, and you build from that. So years ago, we used to run the directors events, and we'd have people who were running recruitment agencies talking about the groups they'd created, which were bringing together the type of people they hired for or the type of candidates they engaged with. And they were really valuable, and nothing has changed. It's the same model. You work out who you want to be with. You work out how you give them value. You work out how you're different from other people. You find the right platform on which to do that. I mean, it sounds like a lot of work, doesn't it?
Yeah, I'm a skeptic, not because I don't want to see it, but I understand how much pressure agencies have. And I think it's going to be a one-person business might have more opportunity to build a community than if you're working in a company, like one of the big serious companies, quote unquote serious, as using James and Niels' term, like chunky businesses. You don't have the bandwidth. Someone's going to say, we need those sales, and you're going to do the sales. Like you can't be, you don't have the time. Worst thing you're going to try and do is force it, and it'll be hashed up. You probably need to hire people specifically as community managers, and I just don't see too many agencies making that push, because they'd rather have another biller, essentially.
It's the same for in-house, though, isn't it, Hung? Is that you're a talent acquisition department, you've got a schedule of work on your plate, talent pooling is really important. We could build a community, but actually we've got quite a lot of other work to do. And there are other ways to engage. You get Adam on and you say to Adam, where should you be spending your time? It's a lovely thing to have, is a proper organic community of people who like you, but actually forcing it probably isn't the right route to go down.
Yeah, and it takes some strategy from the in-house side. It takes strategy, and it takes the willingness to basically have some redundant capacity for a certain period of time. So in other words, you might be sacrificing 2 more people who are sourcing for you, and you're going to lose a bit more sourcing capacity, but you're going to say, hey, the payoff's 18 months down the line when we've built this community of people that we're recruiting from. So a lot of leadership, I think, required there. Listen, Louise, I want to go with the questions. I need you to help me to answer these questions. I realize there's 7 questions down there. We're way beyond time, and we're going to just go through these to see where we go. Okay, so the first one from Joe, actually. A cheeky question for you, Hung. Can you give me your 21 forecast in terms of number of people who will be part of the Brainfood community? Okay, I will do that. So I guess this means the newsletter. Newsletters are 24,000, which is about 6,000 increase from last year. We actually increased it by 12,000, but we lost 6,000 through unsubscribes. This is people losing jobs and therefore the emails going. And I reckon we'll probably get to 35,000. I think we're going to do another 10, 15 this year. So there's a solid prediction. Okay. How about Daniel Shelton? He said, look, do you have any tips or tricks on how to balance private and professional life? Lou, what do you reckon of this one?
Part of me believes you either can do it or you can't. I think there's plenty of people who are workaholics who really struggle with this, who don't get the balance right at all. When I applied for my job at Crowdcast, Si asked me that question. And I said, I've worked from home for 20 years. I've got 3 kids. I've got a husband. I've got a dog. If I hadn't have sorted it out by now, I would not be able to do this. And that's a really lazy answer. But I kind of think that I kind of muddled through and sorted it out. But do put your own mental health first. If there's one thing that 2020 taught us, is it's cool to think about where you sit in that regard. Do not be brushing things under the carpet. Make sure you address issues which are starting to fuck with your brain.
Yeah, absolutely right. Okay, Emma Merrington, what are your predictions for 2021? My predictions, Emma, is I'm going to be the champion at Beat Saber in the Hoxton area. There's no question I'm going to be number 1 on that. Okay, moving on. How about a thought on how candidate experience evolved in, let me just do this. This is from Pooja. Thought on how candidate experience evolved in 2020 through remote hiring and Zoom interviews. Answer your thoughts on this, Louise?
We got it wrong, then we started to get it right, or righter, is what I think. I think there's still loads of work to be done. I think the good organisations were swift to move with this. I think a lot of the wrong candidates got hired, or a lot of really great candidates didn't get hired.
Yep. Okay. I'm going to go the other way and say we actually did a good job because we got rid of the interview. I think going and scheduling around and doing, all of that type of stuff, trying to find where the office is and all this type of uncomfortable stuff, it actually takes half a day.
I like that. I want it. Yeah. Sorry, I'm old school.
No, it's like I got better. It's not better things to do because I don't. I don't have better things to do. But it's like I don't like sweating in a suit because I'm always late to these things, and it's like, oh no, horrible. So I think the kind of experience is better because there's more control. But who knows? Okay, a couple more. We've got this from Pedro Castro. He said, "How will more conservative companies make the change to remote first in 2021 post-pandemic, broadening their talent pool, or won't they?" I've got my thoughts on this, but what are your thoughts on this, Louise?
I think it takes a proper effort. I think that if it's not intrinsically within your organisation, then you're going to have to make an effort. And if you want to succeed, you are going to have to make that effort. What would your thoughts be?
My thoughts are conservative companies will force on-premise. So we're going to force people back to on-premise, and they'll sacrifice the people who don't want to do that, and they'll sacrifice their ability to recruit people that insist on it, but they're going to insist on it. So I think there'll be a percentage of conservative companies that will do that. Okay, this is from Lee Candiori. Lee is saying, hi Lee, by the way. He's saying, how do you folks see Brexit affecting recruitment, either agency or in-house side? Louise?
Oh, God. Can we not get a Brexit expert on? Let's do that next week.
No, I really hate Brexit. And
So do I.
We've Brexited. No one knows, Lee. No one knows. I think if there's a recession that's prompted a little bit by Brexit, I mean, obviously there's going to be GDP damage. Probably that will have an impact in terms of company growth. On the other hand, we've just made it much harder to recruit from Europe, which means that talent pools got shorter, which might actually mean a lot more money going to recruitment agencies because suddenly the ability to hire people is less. We've gone from a market of 400 million people to a market of 760 million people. So it certainly means that recruitment is going to be tougher to do.
Silver lining. I love how you found that positive there. Super.
Hey, recruiters are always kind of able to pivot in the face of disaster. Okay, here's last one from Chad. Chad is saying, great that the EU's putting money into pockets of citizens. That's not happening in the US. Will the EU carry the global economy?
Yes.
Yep.
Does Chad want a yes or no answer to that, do you think?
He wants a yes, no. I'm going to say no. Yeah. It won't be that. The growth is going to be in the places that handle the pandemic best, and that's East Asia, Asia Pac.
That is for sure.
It's not Europe at all. We screwed it. All right, that's it, folks. Listen, we've had an amazing show. We're nearly up to 2 hours worth. So thanks for bearing with me. We've still got 55 people watching. That's amazing, and probably thousands more on LinkedIn, I'm sure. But yeah, that's great. Really great to have everyone on the show. I hope you understood the little bit of the craziness here because we're trying to get so many people crammed in. But we'll get all of these guests back on at some point because they're amazing people for us. Louise, let me let you go at this point. Thank you so much for your time. I'll see you soon, my dear. And that's about it for everyone. A final thing. Thank you to our sponsors, Cronofy. We've been talking a lot from agency side and from in-house. Automation is going to be a big topic. If it's not like very close to top of your priority list for 2021, it needs to be. And the simplest thing when you need to think about automation is actually what are the horrible bits of the job that you can easily get rid of that no one's going to complain about. Let me assure you, scheduling interviews is one of those things. So if you're not using an enterprise-friendly scheduling software, you need to check out Cronofy. Cronofy.com. I've just shared the link in the chat stream. Okay, that's about it, everybody. I'll be back next week. We are going to be talking about from a developer's point of view. So we're going to be part 3 of our mini series where we're getting developers on screen and we're going to ask them about what they think about recruiter behavior. It is a must watch if you are a tech recruiter. Okay, that's about it, everyone. I'm really cold. I'm going to run a bath and jump into it.